I'm author and writer Beth Perkel. Stay tuned. Taped with Rabbi Doug is next.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight. But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football.
Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're going to watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug.
Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're going to see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. Glad you could be with us today. My guest today is Beth Perkel. Beth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Beth is a professional writer and teacher, and her husband is a rabbi and a lawyer, and she was first published in national and international magazines at age 17, won her first writing contest at age 18, and her writing included a New York Times best-selling book by age 19. Her education and passion for psychology began during her years at the University of Pennsylvania, where she graduated Phi Beta Kappa and funded national and international psychology research. She then has written in-depth articles, stories, and personal essays, over a dozen online and print publications. Carry those. Her work has been featured in Newsweek magazine, Mishpacha magazine, Family First, on Aish.com, Times of Israel, who the editor-in-chief was on my TV show a number of times, in the Jewish Press, and in many books, including several Chicken Soup and Chicken Soup for the Soul titles. She is also a popular speaker and has inspired both national and international audiences with her classes, her shiurim, and her divrei chizuk, her words of encouragement and education. She is currently the author of her new book, Light at the Beginning of the Tunnel, Wiring Our Children for Happiness. And this is what we're going to be talking about mainly today, but we want to talk a little bit about Beth herself as well, because you started writing at such a young age and have quite a career already, being a mother and a wife and doing all the things you do along with those things. It seems like a very busy life for a young woman like you. Tell us a little bit about your writing career, and tell us what inspired you to want to write, because it's one thing to write a couple of paragraph articles, or like a newspaper writer who writes a story based on a news story right there, but you go far beyond that. What got you into this?
So, excellent question. I would say, to answer that, I have to go back about 30 years to first grade. I had a first grade teacher who was a very special woman. I turned in a 13-page story to her.
Can you tell us who this is? Because a lot of our viewers might know who that person is.
Mrs. Cohn, who taught me at Solomon Schechter Jewish Day School. And I turned in a 13-page story to her at age 7, and she read it, and she told me, "You are going to be a writer." And I remember it really resonating with me, because, at age 7, you can't necessarily, understand, all of your talents and strengths and everything you're feeling, but I knew that writing was like air to me. I loved writing. I mean, for a first grader to write a 13-page story, they have to really enjoy it. And that really stuck with me throughout the years. And Mrs. Cohn actually came to my wedding many years later, and with her wedding gift, she enclosed the story she had saved all those years.
Oh my goodness.
And it was very beautiful. So that's really what first put the idea in my mind. But then when I was a teenager, I knew this was my goal, and I began to think, why can't I start now? So my family got Newsweek for many years, and they had something called the My Turn column, and I thought to myself, why can't I write something for that, and maybe they'll take it, maybe they won't. And I remember being so nervous about mailing it, even submitting it, that one of my friends at a stoplight on our way to high school just took it from me and threw it at the mailbox. I wasn't even sure it got in. But I got a call from Newsweek a few weeks later that they loved the story, they were publishing it, and then it was so well received in America. It was actually published in the international Newsweek editions, and that really gave me a boost to want to continue my writing. So at that point, I decided, why not try stories? I submitted several of those to Chicken Soup, different Chicken Soup for the Soul titles, and a bunch of those were accepted, and the ball kind of got rolling for there. I started freelancing, took a break in college while I was doing my studying, and my work for my degree, but then after that I started writing for the different publications that you mentioned. mentioned here.
Wow, how cool, how cool. How exciting. I mean, it's really exciting. Your parents must have been absolutely ecstatic.
Oh yeah, Newsweek didn't even tell us when the international edition was printing it. Not my husband. At that time, it was my father who got a call from his cousin in Israel and said, I saw your daughter in Newsweek.
Wow.
So then, we started, collecting the different stories as they appeared around the world.
Wow. So I want to talk a little bit about light at the beginning of the tunnel. Your subtitle is Wiring Our Children for Happiness, but really in going through the book, I noticed that it's also wiring us for happiness while we're raising children. And that's a big side theme in the book besides children. But you have something very interesting in there, and that is you say happiness building fits with Torah ideals. And the book isn't only for Jewish people, but you do quote and bring in a lot of biblical and Torah ideals, Jewish ethics into your book. Why do you say that, and what's the reason for making the connection? And was you writing the book because of that connection or not?
So, excellent question. I would say for that, the real seeds for the material in the book began when I was at the University of Pennsylvania, because when I was a freshman, there was a professor named Martin Seligman, who is considered by many to be the father of positive psychology, and he published Authentic Happiness, which was one of the first books in the field, back when I was a freshman. And I was in a special program where where the university funded our research. So I was doing a lot of psychology research, and I really was fascinated by this field of positive psychology that was basically exploring human potential. And when I graduated, I kind of continued in the emergence, following the emergence of the field, but I also then went to Israel, where while my husband was studying for rabbinic ordination, I was also, doing a lot of religious studying, and I saw a lot of overlap between the two, and I found it fascinating that there are, ancient teachings from rabbinic sources that fit right in with this, what was a newly emerging field in the 2000s. And I really was fascinated by this overlap. So when I first started giving classes in the community, when we moved back to Chicago after living in Israel, I kind of tested out my ideas there with giving some classes that were about the overlap between the two. And they were very well received. And as I began to have my own children, I began to see how important it was to work on this talent of happiness with them at a young age. And I really found it extra meaningful to be able to show them how this was, something that fit in with our tradition as well. It wasn't just something new out there.
Very, very cool. So you come out with a statement, not right at the beginning, but near the beginning of the book, and you say, happiness is a scientific pursuit. Why do you say happiness is a scientific pursuit? Because people think of it as a psychological pursuit or an emotional pursuit. Why is it a scientific pursuit?
So I think I say it's become a scientific pursuit because we're now able to measure all these kind of things having to do with happiness. Like what positive psychology did is it turned it from just an emotional pursuit into a scientific pursuit. And we're able to measure how things like mindfulness are able to increase people's happiness. Gratitude has become a very hot topic, like how much gratitude also can increase people's happiness. So I think it bolsters it by being able to quantify things that in the past we sort of, before positive psychology, I think psychology a lot of times is looked at fixing what was wrong in us, but positive psychology is more about harnessing the power of human potential to make our lives better.
So if you ask my children, my younger children, how is happiness a scientific pursuit, they're going to tell you, because I can't live without my telephone or my computer. How do we find happiness when our children are finding a lot of happiness in their electronic devices rather than in actual social interaction with their family members like it was in the past?
100%. It's one of the biggest problems, I think, facing our younger generation in terms of being able to find happiness. Unfortunately, our younger generation is finding happiness in a lot of objects, one of them being the telephone. There's a great quote by one of my favorite writers, Anne Lamott, and she says, "Everything works when you unplug it, even yourself." So one of the things that we can teach our children is to have boundaries around technology. Especially to kind of reclaim our own lives by with our own family lives by maybe not allowing phones at dinner, or having certain time limits on the phone, because our children, we create our children's realities, and they have grown up with cell phones and computers being mainstays in their parents' lives for work, and for social media, etc. It's become such a force that we need to kind of be able to show them what life was like before technology became such a mainstay, and to not let them get addicted to it, right? To show them the beauty of human interaction and not just interaction behind a screen, Used to be people got together, and now text messaging has sort of taken a place of that. So I think it's really important for our generation to underscore this for this next generation.
Or even the phenomenon of no longer writing letters to our relatives out of town or in other countries, and being able to pick up the telephone and FaceTime with them or talk to them when they're halfway across the world at no cost. Cost. That's a big change too. So I wanted to point that out because I thought about that. But you actually have a chapter called Power of Unplugging, and you just mentioned unplug, so I'm going to ask you that right now. How do we unplug ourselves? When we are at that point, how do we unplug ourselves?
You're saying in terms of technology?
Not just technology. No. I'm talking about from the stress and the desires that bring us away from the happiness that we're really seeking.
The main tool, all the tools in my book address that in some angle, but the main tool is mindfulness. Because what mindfulness does is it takes us away from all of those distractions. There's a beauty, bringing in Jewish thought. This is like many 100 years ago, probably 100 plus years ago, a rabbi named Rabbi Chaim Friedlander, the Sifsei Chaim, has an essay on what he calls Menuchas HaNefesh, which is essentially the Hebrew term for mindfulness. And he points out very astutely in it how young people are always focusing and worried about the future, and older people are always stuck in the past. And because of this, we are always living in a moment that's not really the current moment, and that's what causes a lot of our unhappiness. So when we're able to focus on what's directly in front of us and not be living in different, the time travel of the past or the future, we're able to really re-plug back into what's important right in front of us, be it our family, be it even just our own physical well-being. When we're able to focus on what's in the here and now, we're able to appreciate the small beautiful things in life, right? Like if you're driving without distraction, I sometimes do that. I hear like the sound of the birds, the trees, even just focusing on your breath calms you. It's been scientifically studied how it's, relates to so much more well-being when you're able to, refocus on your breath.
Kind of a message of meditating in many ways.
Exactly. So the best thing we can do to reconnect to ourselves and those around us is to practice mindfulness and focus as much as we can on the current moment.
So focusing back on the children, how does one learn to read their child's inner thoughts and needs, such as happiness, depression, and discern whether they're applying too much discipline or not enough discipline? Those are things that everyone deals with. And how do we learn to read those things and kind of take them in and try and display them out to our children at the same time as we learn what they're really thinking inside and what the right approach is?
So I would split my answer to that into two portions. In terms of figuring out with our children, being able to read them, there's a lot of different things we can do, also related to discipline, which was part of your question. One of the exercises I have in the first section of my book, which the first section is really devoted to understanding our children on a more individual, personal level, is to understand the motivations behind their actions. So when we focus on the end product of our children's actions, a lot of times we take like a one-size-fits-all approach that doesn't necessarily get to the root of the problem. Take, for example, the following scenario. Let's say there are 4 kids that all don't do their homework one night. And their homework was an essay on a talent they have they're going to present to the class tomorrow, let's say, right? Now, all 4 children didn't do their homework. So if we come down hard on that end product, you didn't do your homework, now you're going to lose points in school, that's missing the nuance of what's behind it. So let's take those 4 children. It could be that one child didn't do it because they're lazy, they just didn't feel like it, they had a long day of school, and it's not interesting to them. Maybe the second child didn't do it because she's self-conscious. She doesn't want to have to get up in front of the class tomorrow and have to present about a talent she has, so she's shying away from it, hoping they won't have time for her presentation. She's going to put it off a little bit. A third child might not do it because he's angry, right? He's angry at the teacher, he's angry at his parents, so it's kind of like rebellion that he's not doing it. And let's say the fourth child is just a pleasure seeker. There's really there's no specific, angry reason. It's just that he really wants to play video games that night. So when we look at what's behind their actions, we're able to get to the root of understanding and helping them in such a more targeted way than if we had given them a one-size-fits-all approach. For that.
Gosh, I have a child that fits into all those categories like she doesn't do it all of them at once. So
That's complicated.
yeah, that's really complicated. And school phobia sometimes goes with that also, which is
Right.
another issue. I guess the one chapter that I related to the most, and I don't want to ask you about every chapter in the book, but the one that I really wanted you to talk about is the complaint drain. That I related to that so much in going through the book. I said, oh, this is my life. This is my life. Tell us about that chapter, the complaint drain, if you
Sure.
would, and tell us what your answers or your thoughts are on it.
Okay, so complaining is a very common issue with children and with adults. It's everyone. There's a certain amount of complaining that's natural in life. And really, I explain in the chapter, there's really three types of main complainers. One is the sympathy seeker. They complain because they want that sympathy. They want that connection that comes when people are sympathizing with you, giving you sympathy. Another type of complainer is just doing it to let off steam. They really don't need anything out of it. They just want someone to hear them, right? And the third type, and that's the more dangerous type of complainer, is the one that sort of gets this psychological hit from it, right? Which creates this feedback loop where they feel like they need to complain, right? And it gets them stuck in wanting to complain. And the issue with complaining is it really activates our negativity bias, which is something we all have, which is this bias to focus more naturally on negative things than positive things. So what I explain in the chapter is that there are ways that we can work with our children and ourselves to actually complain better. So three of the ways I mentioned in the chapter, or three of the aspects to complaining better, are having a purpose to it, right? If there's a reason for the complaint, then you're not just going into the third category of just like complaining for the sake of complaining, or even the first category of needing that sympathy. Let's say you have a problem at a store, right? So you're complaining there because you want some way to rectify the situation. You want the store to help fix the problem with the product or whatever have you. The second part is to make sure to include something positive, because that breaks the negativity bias. So you could say, look, I really love your store. In general, I'm really happy here, but there was this issue here, right? So already when you include something positive, it makes the other person less defensive, and it's gonna break the negativity bias. The third piece, though, is to end on some kind of way, end on a positive note. So in the store example, if you say, this product is terrible and I'm never shopping here again, why would they have any desire to help you fix the problem, right? If you say, this is my problem and I'd like to keep, being a patron here, so how can we fix this? It already makes it collaborative. So we want to make sure when we're complaining that we do it in a way that's going to actually be a positive experience for us and those around us, because otherwise we all know people, I'm sure, that we don't want to be around because there's too much complaining.
Okay, very good, very good. I am here with Beth Perkel. This is her book, Light at the Beginning of the Tunnel, Wiring Our Children for Happiness. And we're here on Taped with Rabbi Doug, and we'll be right back.
COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective. Millions of doses have already been given in the United States, and these vaccines have the most intensive safety monitoring in U.S. history. If you have questions, get answers from a reliable source. CDC.gov.
I'm Rabbi Akiva, and you're watching Taped with Rabbi Doug.
Welcome back. I'm here with Beth Perkel. We're talking about her book, Light at the Beginning of the Tunnel, Wiring Our Children for Happiness. And what makes your book unique about happiness, I wanted to ask you, compared to other books that are written about living happy lives or raising children that are happy? There are other books out there with titles such as that. What makes your book unique? I think what I find unique is your Torah perspective within the book. I find that to be a theme throughout different parts of the book. But what do you find in your writing that makes your book unique compared to others? Because I'm sure even before you went into this, because you studied this and you had your professor that you talked about who was into this, and you probably have read other books on the subject. What makes your book unique?
So I would say two things aside from the Torah perspective. One is that I really try to approach it as an all-family endeavor. So when we just focus on our own happiness, there's books about happiness as adults. There are, not as many books about happiness specifically in teaching children, but there are some of those too. But I really try to include the panorama of the whole family experience. So for example, the second section of the book is different tools that we can use for our children working on this talent of happiness. But the third section is dedicated to happiness as parents. Because we know that one of the most sharp tools in our parenting toolbox is modeling. So if you are just not very happy yourself, you're not going to be able to teach these concepts to your children in as effective of a way. So I try to approach it as an all-family endeavor. That's the first part. The second part that I find unique is that what I try to convey in the book, and this is a happiness book, reminds you, is that happiness is more about learning to tolerate all emotions and to move through them and accept them versus only the pursuit of feeling, let's say, happy and laughy, right? Real true happiness is accepting ourselves for who we are and being able to tolerate all emotions and to learning how to harness them, right, for your own well-being. So in other words, it's more about being well-adjusted and resilient than, just having a smile on your face all the time.
So my question for you in following up with that is your own relationship with your own husband, because your husband is an attorney, and I have a lot of friends who are attorneys, and I know your husband, and a lot of times you have a bad day in court, you have a bad day with clients, and you come home, and are you able to spread the happiness into that day with your husband when he comes home so that it doesn't reflect on the children? Because it's a hard thing in our home. Is it hard for you?
I have to say I'm blessed in that my husband is, thank God, one of the most well-adjusted people I know. Remember, happiness in my definition is being well-adjusted and resilient. So he is really able to leave work stress, pretty much in the office, which I'm blessed about. But at the times that he's not, I think that we both help each other with the, reframing and refocusing. And I have this concept in my book called a Mindset Malfunction. Mm-hmm. And it's throughout the book I have these flags that flag for us, when we're sort of stuck in the wrong mindset. And he took a picture of this flag, and sometimes when he sees that I'm stuck in a mindset malfunction, he'll just text me the image of the flag. Oh, so I think it's more in the other direction. But it was all I need to get the message of, okay, reframe, refocus, put everything in context.
A lot of times we find that people who are experts in their field are able to look at things as a third person. But when it comes to the first person, they have trouble internalizing their own concepts within their own lives. And so I want to know, are you able to use your own concepts and your own ideals with happiness with your own children? Or do you find it tougher to do that with your own children? And if you're able to do that with your own children, can you give me an example of how some of the ideals that you brought down in your book you've been able to apply at home with your kids?
Yes. So as like anyone, even though I've written a book about happiness, of course I have my own struggles, and definitely, in teaching my children. But I do find that everything that I have in this book, I have tried out hands-on, and I am able, thank God, to, really, help them refocus, help them put things into context. Children are very prone to all or nothing thinking. So when they get upset about something, sometimes they're, they think things are always going to be this way, or this problem is always going to be there. So I do a lot of reframing and asking them questions to help them come to their own understanding of how maybe things are not as absolute as this, and maybe there's a bigger picture here, and maybe they can get beyond that. And also we do a lot of having a sense of humor. I think having a sense of humor in life is one of the best skills you can have. And I will give you an example. So we talk a lot about looking for the gift amidst the garbage of life, right? So sometimes things are difficult, but can we find some positive elements within that? Either in terms of like why this might have happened, or something to just bring a smile to our faces. So a recent example was we returned after being away for a few days, and there had been road construction on our street. And we returned to find that we had been collecting these candlesticks, sort of a collection of candlesticks for many years, our Sabbath candles. And a large mirror had fallen off the wall and knocked down this collection of candlesticks. And my daughters each have their own set of candlesticks that have been presents to them over the years, and I have a set of heirloom sterling silver candlesticks from my grandmother that got bent out of shape in this accident, and we were all very upset, and it was very frustrating. Sure. And then my daughter snuck off. Mind you, she was upset about losing her own candlesticks, and while I wasn't looking, she went to the computer, and she printed out a picture of Lumiere. Beauty and the Beast is my favorite Disney movie, and I'm actually going to show you what she did. I have this in my book. She glued it on the candlesticks. Maybe we can, I hope that people can see this.
Oh,
and she
so
created,
so
she turned it into Lumiere, and we had such a good laugh after this. Hopefully we can see this at home.
I'm a big fan also, by the way, so it's
And I posted it to Facebook. I've never gotten something with so many likes. People just thought it was so endearing, and it was. It changed the whole situation for us. And then my son went a step further, the amazing, things children can do with computers. He photoshopped this into a scene of Beauty and the Beast, this image. And we all had a wonderful laugh.
That's beautiful.
Spread the word with it.
That's beautiful. So I guess the last question I want to ask you, because our time is running out. The famous phrase, everybody, when people have trouble and everything, they say, don't worry, there's light at the end of the tunnel. How did you come up with light at the beginning of the tunnel as your title for your book? Where did that come from, and how does it fit in perfectly?
So I really did want to have this plan where it's exactly like you're saying. Usually the term light at the end of the tunnel signifies like a difficult task that's nearing completion. So here, our children are just starting on the road of their difficult task, navigating the tunnel of life. And so I thought it was an apt image for that, as well as the fact that there is this analogy to light that follows throughout the book. We know light is often very synonymous with happiness. And we take this analogy, and every chapter in my book, instead of being called a chapter, is called a circuit, like an electrical circuit. Because what we're trying to do with each chapter is install each of those happiness components in our personal circuit board, let's say, that will then allow the light of happiness to flow to ourselves and those around us. So it felt like the right thing, both from the play on words and the analogy to light.
Wow, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. You know how much I love having friends and community members on the show, and I wish you much success in your writing career, and with your new book, Light at the Beginning of the Tunnel, Wiring Our Children for Happiness. This is the book right here, and if you want more information about the book, you can email us at info@tvrabbi.com. I will forward that to Beth, and I know she'll get back to you personally. Remember, if you want to check out our website, www.tvrabbi.com, where you can see this show and former shows on the web. That's our website. Beth, can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much.
Beth Perkel, thanks for being on the show, and thank all of you for being with us. We hope to see you next time right here on Tape with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone.
Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug on the TV tonight.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.